Hello and welcome to my Unchained deck profile. This is a deck that I want to build for a very long time, and now because of the 2020 Megatins, I have access to this deck, which is really cool. This deck is a very fun one. It's great going second and also sometimes very nice going first. And one thing that also going forward for this deck is that it's a deck that is really good as a rogue option, as well for the fact that it's just very hard to deal with a deck that just start popping everything and just making things a little bit more difficult than you think when you're facing this deck. And this deck is really fun. But before we jump right into the list itself, I'm going to remind the usual thing that a subscriber a day keep the depression away, so if you want to help the channel and help me and see more videos like this, please consider to hitting that subscribe button, as well give it a like if you enjoy the content. And we're almost to 1600 subscribers, which is really awesome, and I'm hoping we'll be able to reach 2000 to the end of the year. Without further ado, let's jump right into the list. Alright, so before we jump right into the list, as usual, let's discuss the deck price. So for the deck price, from what I checked, ranged $120 to $150, depending on where you purchase. The only reason why the deck is very expensive, because most of the cards are like around 25 cents to like $1, maybe except from some exceptions, which may be ranging to $5, but the reason is the deck is so expensive is because of one particular card, which we will discuss an alternative for it in the budget section, because you need to run 3 copies of it in my opinion, and each one of these are ranging from $20 to $30 a copy, and that's why it's a little bit expensive. But now let's jump right into the list. So first things first, let's start off with the twins. We're running triple copies of Sarama, triple copies of Aruha, and then in order to show the third one on screen, we need to move these a little bit and running triple copies of Rakia. Now, let's talk about each and every single one of these, because each and every single one of these are important. So, this one is probably the primary one you want to use, and all of these also have 1500 attack and 1500 defense if you haven't noticed. They're all Fiends level 3, and these two lock your archetype into Fiends if you use their effects, which is something that I should also say in advance. Also, another thing for these, they have effects to destroy cards, but if you use their effect to destroy cards to destroy themselves, they will not summon an Unchained from deck, because that's what happened if they're destroyed. But if they're destroyed by their own name, they will not summon an Unchained from deck, which is something that sometimes people are mistaken when they're playing and picking up the deck, so just keep that in mind. So now let's talk about these completely. So as for this one, Aruha, you get to special summon this card by popping a card you control, and then for the rest of the turn you're locked into Fiend monsters, and like I said, the effect that if it gets destroyed except by its own effect, or should I say by its own name, you get to special summon one from your deck. And by doing that, obviously, you're able to pop your spells and traps, which we'll get to them, which are able to summon these from your deck, which is also really cool. As for Rakia, it's pretty much on the field, a quick effect, target a card you control, destroy it. That's pretty much what it does, and once again, it's lock you into Fiends. So that's also really important. Lastly, probably the best one, and the one that kind of enhanced the strategy quite a bit, Sarama. This one allowing you to target an Unchained card in your graveyard except himself, and then set it into your field, and then destroy one card you control. And of course, if it's destroyed himself, it doesn't get the effect. But if you have let's say this one, one of the things that happens is you pop one of your set cards, you summon this, the set card will summon this, then you're going to use this effect to set the card back, and then this will essentially get popped to summon one of your other Unchained monsters. That's pretty much how the deck functions, and essentially that's how you want to go with this. And that's it for the twins, which are the little guys. In my opinion, you have to maximize on these guys, because you do going to go to the grind game with this deck quite a bit, so maximizing on these guys is actually quite important. But now, let's move on into the main deck boss monsters, which are 2 copies of Abominable Unchained Soul and 1 copy of Unchained Soul of Disaster. Now, the better one, obviously, in Abominable Unchained Soul, which you can only special summon once per turn, and it has the following effects. So first things first, if a card you control is destroyed, you get to special summon this card from your hand, and then if it gets special summoned, you get to pretty much discard a card from your hand, and then pop a card on the field, or should I say destroy a card on the field. Then, once per turn during the end phase, if this card is sent to the graveyard, or should I say destroyed by battle by card effect in the graveyard, you get to special summon it from the graveyard, but put it in the bottom of your deck when it leaves the field, which is not really a big deal because it's really good for these guys because you can use their effects to pop cards and then get hits back from your deck, and it's also kind of like giving you additional souls or activations from hand if you're able to search it, so that's really, really cool. And then you have, obviously, Unchained Soul of Disaster, which is kind of like your Garnet of the deck, but it's still really important. It's get 300 attack for each Unchained card in your graveyard, and then you pretty much gain the following effects that you can use. So, first things first, the main effect that you're going to use this card for is that you target a monster your opponent control, and then use it and this to make a Dark Link of your choice, which is really cool. The second effect, if this card gets destroyed on the field or whatever by battle by card effect, you get to essentially summon an Unchained from your graveyard, except himself. So that's really, really cool on that department. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Does it for the Unchained. Honestly, they're 12 monsters. They do need a little bit of an explanation, in my opinion, because, you know, their effects a little bit of complex sometimes to understand. But for the most part, the deck, once you get the idea of it, it's actually pretty simple. Now let's move on to the next section of deck, which is a bunch of hand traps, because this deck is a deck that loves to OTK, go seconds, or even if it's you going first, you need a way to essentially deal with your opponent, because this deck kind of like have a little bit of a hard time to running different things. Obviously, you can run things in the side if you feel like you want to run some kinds of, like I said, interruptions or traps, but for the most part, this is what you want to run, in my opinion, or at least that works for me. So what I run are triple Gamma, 1 Driver, 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 2 Ghost, 2 Phantasme, and then the 1 copy of Prinkeratops, because like I said, this is a going second deck, so Prinkeratops is absolutely insane here, and it's also help you pop your own cards, which is really cool. Now, once we'll get the Evil Twins and all that stuff, the deck might going to change direction as well, and I'm going to run less hand traps, because of the fact that the twins, the other set of twins, actually help the deck make a link for like this. But we're going to see how that's going to work. But for the most part, this is what you want to run in your hand trap section. You want to have like about this number of hand traps. Obviously, if you have a different lineup of hand traps, you can run whatever you want. But I feel like these 6, or should I say these plus the driver is really important in this. And then these can be any slots of whatever you want. Infinite Impermanence, evenly matched. What else? DD Crow, Lancia, whatever you want to, but for the most part, you want to run a huge chunk of end traps because this is really important. Also, the reason why I did specifically decide to run Phantasma, which I don't really see a whole lot of people run today, is because of the fact that going first, my opponent is going to probably link. And they're going to have like a link 2 or 3. And one of the biggest problems of decks that have a lot of hand traps is the fact that sometimes you open up with a hand that is full of hand traps and you're not able to play. And Phantasme kind of like guaranteed to you kind of like an interruption of sort if your opponent decide to like not read its secondary effect, which sometimes they do, and then you kind of like getting a negation, which is really cool because if they're trying to target and destroy it. But the point is that mostly what it does, it just refresh your hand, fix it to have hand traps you want, or just specifically, you're getting cards that you will be able to start off next turn, because sometimes, like I said, you open up with a hand full of hand traps, and you have nothing to do, like, you're able to stop your opponent, but, like, you have nothing to do in your own turn, and then they're just going to pretty much OTK you, so that's kind of sucks. But that's pretty much does it for the monsters. Now we'll move on to the spells. So for the spells, you're running a very low chunk of spells and traps as well. But we're running, first off, triple copies of Abomination Prison, which is the only Unchained spell that is not searchable, which is really, really much a shame, and you cannot set it with some Sarama. But the other card that we do run is also 1 copy of Walling of the Unchained Souls. And then the card that I mentioned, which is very, very expensive, triple copies of Pot of Extravagance, which, like I said, I'm going to cover up a card that you can run instead of this, but in my opinion, if you have the access to it, it's absolutely amazingly important, because the extra deck is not really super important in this deck, which we'll get to the reason why, but it's still really, really cool. Now let's talk about these. These 2 cards, if they're set on the field and they're getting destroyed, they're able to special summon for you 1 Unchained monster from your deck, but you can only use each of the effects once per turn. And as for the effects themselves, first off, Abomination Prison, giving you the ability to search any Unchained card, and then Walling of the Unchained Souls. This is a card that I've seen a lot of people maybe cut and thinking like it's not really that good, but the reason why I decided to run this card is because of the fact that, like, first off, if you link summon an Unchained Link, it's giving you a free pop, which is really cool, and if you link into an Abomination, you're able to pop 2 cards, which is really nice. But the second part is because of the same naming of this card, that is like, if it's set and it's get destroyed by, like, you know, Araha, or whatever his name is, you get to pretty much summon an Unchained from your deck. But the problem with this one is that you're not able to set this back with this. So you do need sometimes the 7th name for this one. Now, of course, part of Extravagance most of the time help you fix that, but I most of the time needed the 7th name, so that's why I'm deciding to run 1 copy of Walling of the Unchained Souls, but you can decide to run not to run it. So yeah, that's it for the spells. As for the traps, triple copies of Monster Reborn, which is Abominable Chamber of the Unchained, and then triple copies of, I guess, I'm not sure what the name of a card is. It's like, I guess, like your own break sword in the form of a trap. Because this card, you target an Unchained monster you control, pop it, and then you pop a card on the field. And this one, like I mentioned, is a Monster Reborn. That's pretty much what they do. And like the spells themselves, they're essentially giving you the ability to pop them on the field, or should I say when they're getting popped, they're summoned to you and Unchained from your deck. And you absolutely have to maximize on these cards, because like I mentioned, a lot of your cards just like love to pop your cards, and this is just like start your plays, because this guy right here is your most important card for starters, which are Aruha. It's really, really important, and then you, like, for example, pop this, summon Sarama, Sarama will set this back, pop the Aruha, Aruha will then giving you, like, another name that you need, and then you just go with your plays there. So that's why spells and traps are really, really important to maximize on for Unchained, or at least, like, trying to. Walling is obviously the worst one, so that's why you only run 1, so 10s is enough, but you'd still need to run enough, if that makes sense. But that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Now we'll move on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck itself, we're running 2 copies of Unchained Abomination, which I love the Prismatic Secretor. I got 2 of these for this deck specifically, because I do have a third one in an Ultra Rare for one of my other decks, but I did want to have two additional copies just in case. Then triple copies of Anguish, and triple copies of Rage for your Unchained lineup. You have to maximize on these cards because of the fact that you run Pot of Extravagance. But if you don't want to run Pot of Extravagance, you can obviously, like, which we'll get to the budget card for it. You could get away with 2, 2, and 1 if you want to just have your extra deck versatile. But for the most part, you're honestly just going to go into these guys. And these guys are really cool. So both of these, essentially, when they destroyed by battle of a card effect on the field, they allowing you to target a fiend monster in your graveyard except themselves and add it to your hand, which is allowing you the ability to recur cards, which is really cool. This one, unfortunately, while it does giving you 3 pops, it doesn't recur for you anything back, so that's why it's a little bit worse than the others, but it's still really important. And as for their individual effects, this one, during your opponent's turn, is allowing you as a quick effect to take your opponent monster and pretty much use it to make a Dark Link, which is really cool. This one is just during your own turn, which is kind of sucks, but you know, it's still something. So sometimes you would just like climb with this into this, and just during your own turn, you just use this to climb into this. Which this one, allowing you to pretty much pop 3 cards overall. If a card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, you pop a card. During this damage step, or should I say, when a monster on the field is destroyed by battle, you pop a card, and then during the end phase, you pop a card. So pretty much 3 pops in 1, and these, like I said, is your ways to climb. And pretty much that's it for the Unchained extra deck. I just felt I need a little bit more explanation for these ones, because it's the first time I'm doing it on my channel, so I just wanted to go a little bit thoroughly about these ones. As for the rest of your extra deck, honestly, it doesn't matter, but these are the 7, I guess, that I decided to run, which are Zoroboros, which is the Coalition, I guess, symbol, Topologic Bomber Dragon, Topologic Transmania, Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus, and then if I'm getting 2 level 8s, Dingirsu Girsu, or ding ding if I need to essentially just remove something that is very, very hard to remove, because one of the biggest problems for this deck is Dragoons, which we do have something to run in it in a side, which we will discuss, but the point is, like, Dragoons is a little bit of a problem. But that's pretty much does it for the extra deck, and does it for the deck itself. Like I said, deck itself is very much on the budget side, very cool, very fun, and it's also very, very much good rogue option if I haven't mentioned it before. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck list itself. Now let's move on into the side deck, shall we? So for the side deck is always up to personal preference. So if you have cards that you think that you want to fit in here, and some cards that you don't want in here, you can choose to do whatever you want. But this is the side deck that works specifically for me on my pocket meta, which is very, very cool for me, and it's actually served me quite well. There may be one or two cards here that I might want to change, but for the most part, this is a really, really good side deck in my opinion. So we're going to start with it. So starting things off, we're running 2 copies of Artifact Lancia, 3 copies of Gamma Seal, which might going to be looking a little bit of a weird one, but we do need a little bit of a way to deal with what they're called, Dragoons and some annoying monsters that, like, even with our hand traps we're not able to remove. Now obviously you can also run Lava Golems instead if you feel you don't need your normal summon, which most of the time you don't, but sometimes the normal summon is important enough that you do need it, so I decided to go with Gamma Seal instead. As for the rest of the side deck, I run triple copies of Dark Ruler No More and triple copies of Cosmic Cyclone, because I just really, really like these cards, and I think they're just really, really good. So that's already bring us up to 11 cards, right? Well, for the 4 last cards, we're going to run 3 copies of Torrential Tribute and 1 copy of Royal Decree, or if you want specifically, you can also run instead 1 copy of Skill Drain. It's literally up to you, what do you prefer, but this is like up to personal preference. Sometimes I'm cutting the Gamma Seal to 2 and then run Skill Drain and the Royal Decree. It's literally up to you, but this is kind of like works for me for the most part. But that's pretty much does it for the side deck. Now we're going to talk about the last thing for those who are interested, which is the little bit of a budget option to replace Pot of Extravagance. Now, for the replacement of Pot of Extravagance, well, I do have few ideas for the most part, but I think the best one that I found is obviously, to replace it, it's its main deck counterpart, Pot of Desires. But by running Pot of Desires, you also need to make some particular changes, because of the fact that Pot of Desires banish 10 cards from your deck. Obviously, like I said, it's a budget option, very, very much so. Like, the prices of Pot of Desires is like around $1 or so. But like I said, like, the changes for the main deck need to be done because the deck, like, you banish 10 cards from your main deck. And these 10 cards can be your Unchained Souls, which you do need them. So in my opinion, at the very least, you need to increase Disaster by 1, or increase the, what is his name again? Or the Abominable Chain Soul as well, like increase 2 of them. So you might be able to like do like running, instead of 3 for Extravagance, you're running 3 Desires, and then instead of 2 of the hand traps, 1 additional Abominable Unchained Soul, and 1 copy of Disaster just to not banish them. But again, up to you, and just change the main deck in your opinion, and maybe even increase it to 44, 45 if you feel like you have way too much less cards for Desires. Because the problem with Desires is that it's also kind of like pushing you a little bit in a bad way for the grind game. But like I said, it's the most reliable budget option for the deck and giving you the +1 that you need. But that pretty much does it for the budget option, because the only card, like I said, is Extravagance. It's a little bit of a problem, and that also does it for the deck profile as a whole. So hope you enjoyed. As usual, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.